So the first line. So I'm going to give you a little backstory about this slide because it's a very busy slide. There's a lot of stuff going on. When I started putting this presentation together, I said, I got an idea. I'm going to list out all the things that we think about in our day, whether we're a career volunteer, when we get on duty, whether we're a chief officer, training officer, all the stuff that goes on in our day. And I said, I'm going to list those things out, and I'm going to overlay a really cool picture of a bunch of guys fighting fire over it. So I thought, man, am I going to be able to list out enough stuff that I can do that and overlay the picture? And I thought, if I can't, I can kind of fudge it. Nobody will know, right? I can kind of fudge it and push them out the side. So I sat down with a pen and paper, and I started listing out all the things that attack the time in our day. And I stopped at 3 pages. So NIST, NFPA, EMS training, ACLS training, diversity training, sensitivity training, right? All these things attack our day when we come on duty. Or if you're a volunteer, when you do that one drill night a week when you got 2 hours to learn everything you need to know. But somewhere at the bottom there lands the first line, which is really sad because the first line gets back to our core duty as firefighters, right? Putting water on the fire. I told Cody I was going to bust on the truckies a little bit because we know truckies do support functions, right? But really, if you think about it, we've got to put some sort of extinguishing agent on the fire to put the fire out, right? And that usually comes from the first line. We struggle with declining staffing, right? 4-man engines, 3-man engines, 2-man engines. Where I work occasionally, sometimes we run a 1-man engine company, right? Nobody here is FDNY or Chicago or San Fran and runs a 5 or 6-man engine. We get that. We also know we have decrease in volunteers, but something else. Something that we don't like to talk about, and that's complacency and overconfidence. How many people have showed up for drill where your training officers come down and say, we're going to drill on pre-connects today, and you've rolled your eyes and said, you know what? I know how to deploy a pre-connect. I can go out, if you pull the engine around to the back parking lot and ask me to pull a pre-connect, I can do that. I could do it in Proby school. But my question for you is pulling a pre-connect in a parking lot like pulling a pre-connect at a house fire? When there's a fence, a toilet planter, a koi pond. Who's had a koi pond in somebody's front yard when they've pulled up at a fire? That's just great, and they're usually deep, right? So all those things impact and hurt our ability to get the first line right. Today I'm going to get up here and I'm going to make the case for why your department must, not should, must get the first line right every time. Andy Fredericks of the FDNY, who died on 9/11, a lot of people know him for all his work with engine company stuff, nozzles, and flow. He had a great saying, and I love his saying, which was, if you put out the fire, you won't have to bail out a window, right? So we talk about survival training and RIT training and 2 in, 2 out and all these things, but Andy had a good point. If you knock the fire down, if you make the conditions better in the building, doesn't that really reduce your risk of having to bail out a window and do a head-first ladder slide, right? Getting the first line right, it saves civilian lives, and most importantly, it helps make our job safer so we can save their lives. I told Mike I didn't get the memo about no EMS references, but I'm going to throw one at you. I'm a paramedic. There's a lot of paramedics in this room. Every paramedic can tell you the 5 rights of medication administration, right? The right patient, getting the right drug, by the right dose, right route, and right time. It's beat into our heads, right? It's burned into our heads. We can recite it at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's meant to be that way. So today I'm proposing we need the same thing for the first line, that every fire chief, fire officer, firefighter, Proby can commit these 5 things to memory and recite them at 3 in the morning without thinking. And that we're going to commit to putting the right number of people, to put the right size and length line, flowing the right volume of water in the right place to put water right on the seat of the fire. 5 simple things that we should be able to do every time with that first line, without hesitation. So I'm going to roll right into the people. Picture on the left, the guy in the red helmet actually is me. So I actually have done this a time or 2 with the hose crew. I've got a nozzleman, backup, my door person's up tight because we haven't moved in yet. I'm in the officer position, and you don't see my line control person who's out of frame. That's what an attack line should look like. But let me propose this to you or ask you this. The firefighter right here See if I can get my laser to work. Is that what your first line looks like most of the time? The one firefighter, right? Running the nozzle, doing everything. There's 5 jobs that must get done every time we stretch on a fire. 5 jobs. Now again, we talked about it. I don't think anybody here runs a 5-man engine company. If you do, good for you. Don't lose that. So you may say, you know what, John? This is our reality. I only have 1 guy, maybe 2 guys to put on a line. You're talking 5 jobs. That's crazy. What I'm telling you is that you are doing 5 jobs every time you stretch. Whether you realize it or not, you're doing 5 jobs. Now, what you may be doing, that one firefighter is doing the work of 5 people. You commit 2 people, 1 is doing the work of 3, 1 is doing the work of 2. So what do we know when I take 2 people, 3 people, 1 person, and try to make them do the work of 5? What are the 2 big things I see? I see inefficiency, and I see increased risk, okay? We must commit the right number of people to the first line every time, even if that means, now this may be some heresy here, even if that means delaying other tasks or combining companies. Even if that means if I have a 3-person engine and I'm going to put the first 3 guys on that line and my inside truck team is coming up with 2 people, okay? If fire's blowing out the front of the house when they pull up, I may say, you know what? Truck A, I want you to assist engine 1 with getting the first line through the front door. Once they get the fire knocked down, they can always peel off, right? I might assign a medic crew. I might assign a second engine company. You may need to say engine 1, engine 2, first line. Engine 3, engine 4, second line. And I hope you're getting 4 engines on your fires. You know, the recent UL and NIST studies tell us something that's really important. And what they tell us is this, is that rapidly cooling the fire environment is the best thing we can do to ensure the safety of occupants and increase the safety for firefighters. So getting that first line off the engine, flaked out, charged, kink-free, and through the front door, and knocking that fire down is the best thing we can do. The 5 positions: nozzle, backup, officer door, and line control. Line control is kind of funny. It's probably the job you've never heard about, but it's probably one of the most important jobs that we do. Nozzle. Give the nozzle to the probie. When I was brand new, they'd always give me the nozzle. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. I'm like, oh, these experienced guys, why am I getting the nozzle? Because all I got to do is open it when the officer says open it and close it when he smacks me in the helmet. And if he wants it to go left and I'm not moving it left, he's usually reaching over and moving it for me, and then smacking me in the helmet with his other hand. Backup. Backup's the hardest working person on the stretch. Okay? The backup person's doing their job right. That nozzleman should be able to let go of the nozzle, right? Backup person should be taking all that nozzle reaction, so all I got to focus on when I'm the nozzle is directing the stream. The officer. Boy, that's a funny one right there. How many of you say when your first due engine arrives, the officer pulls out an ICS board and stands on the front lawn, forms a 2-out team with the AO, and then you send your 2 firefighters in with a line? That's a great idea. Let's take the most experienced person, hopefully, the most knowledgeable person, hopefully, leave them on the front lawn, and send the 2 new guys in with the hose line. That's going to keep them safe because I got a clipboard, right? I was told, and I found that when I'm on the nozzle, when you're on the nozzle, your world becomes a 30-degree cone that's centered around that stream. You see this when you're working that nozzle. That officer being alongside you, looking around, looking at the 6 sides of the fire, looking through their tick, focusing on the accountability of the nozzle crew, that's critical to have that. We need to get those officers inside. Door person at the front door, feeding us line, making sure that these 3 folks inside aren't trying to drag 150 feet of hose by themselves. Boy, it's pretty hard if I'm back up to absorb the nozzle reaction for you while I'm trying to yard 75 feet of charged line around the corner and through the front door. So that door person is critical to keep us moving. And finally, line control. Line control is the most important job you've never heard of. What does line control do? Line control is the person that's out in the street, out on the front lawn. That's the person that after that hose comes off the engine is walking every inch of it, making sure it's not caught under a tire, wrapped around a tree, caught in a fence, somewhere it's going to get kinked. Chases those kinks. What do we know? We know kinks kill. And feeding that line to the door. You want a great drill? If you own an engine with a flow meter, go take one of your pre-connects, start flowing water. Go back 50 feet, put one 90-degree kink in your line, look at the flow meter. Go back another 50 feet, put another 90-degree kink in your line, look at your flow meter. Depending on your hose, you may see up to a 75% drop in your flow out of that nozzle by putting two 90-degree kinks in it. Okay? So that's why it's critical we have that person chasing those kinks, especially as we're moving line. Okay? Do you train to deploy the right size and length line? I love this hose bed. This hose bed on top is awesome. You got a big 2.5 pre-connect. You got your lay bed. You've got your 2 3/4 pre-connects. You've got a 3-inch lay bed, and then you've got a Y-line set up. Okay? Do you have a stretch bed? Do you train with it? Okay? Do you spend the same amount of time training for big lines and stretch bed evolutions as you do pre-connects? Do your hose drills consist of 95% pulling pre-connects and once a year pulling a 2.5? If it does, you're setting yourself up for failure. Do you train on a long line evolution? Do you train on what to do if you pull up on a garden apartment, a hotel, something with setbacks, something that the pre-connect doesn't reach? At 3 in the morning when people are hanging out windows, that's not the time to say, hey, we need to do a long line evolution. Have somebody go, what? Not the time. Do you pre-connect for everything? And bumper lines. You know, folks, bumper lines aren't just for car fires anymore. Okay? Small crews, right? You pull up, you got fire blasting out the front window, and maybe I can only commit 1 or 2 people. Maybe I can get that bumper line. Maybe it's an easier deployment for 1 person. I may not go through the front door with it, but it may be a good choice. Options, right? Tools in our toolbox. Don't be the one-trick pony on the fire ground. I like this guy, the one-man car fire op with the bail half open. Does your department choose your hose and nozzles to be right for the hazards you face or for the convenience of your crews? Who uses an 1.5-inch hose with a 95-gallon-minute nozzle? Why do you do that? Does your department do that because you've done a thorough hazard assessment, because you've gone and looked at your first dues and said, you know what, 95% of our structure fires are 800 square foot houses built in the 1950s on a slab with 8 by 10 bedrooms. Okay, that works. Or is your first due 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 square foot houses built in the last 5 or 10 years, open architecture, lightweight construction? Folks, I was looking at some floor plans online the other day. There was a house. It was 7,500 square feet. The great room in that house, the volume of it, length, width, and height, could fit the Cape Cod-style house that I grew up in that was built in the 1950s. You could put that entire house in the great room of this house. Okay? That's what we're dealing with nowadays. Are you pulling up on that, and is your first line choice an 1.5 inch with a 95-gallon-minute nozzle? If it is, you're setting yourself up for failure. Do you flow the right volume for the BTUs being produced? You know, we all say big fire, big water, right? That's a great line, right? I would say that's big fire. I would say that's pretty big fire. And I would say that's 1 3/4 inches right there. Okay? When you pull up on those big fires, we need to be able to recognize when we need to pull the big lines. And again, if you are not training with the big lines, if your crews are not as confident with the big line as they are at the pre-connect, again, you're setting yourself up for failure. And while we're talking about big lines, with the 2.5, I'm going to make a pretty bold statement, but I believe I can back it up. In today's day and age, I was looking at the MES table out there and the nozzles they have. If you are still running a 100 PSI fog nozzle on your 2.5, you need to get that off now. Okay? The smooth bore, I think a lot of people would argue, is the best tool for that. If your department is adamant that you need a fog nozzle, okay, there's 50 and 75 PSI low pressure fogs out there. Okay? There's no reason to be wrestling the Anaconda and using a 100 PSI nozzle with all the back pressure and the rigidity of the line anymore with the tools that are out there. Every time I've trained people on a 2.5 and I say, we're going to get up and move it around, and they go, ugh, it's because they've had bad experiences. And those bad experiences usually relate to 100 PSI fog nozzles and not enough people and not proper training. You put the right nozzle with the right number of people and the right training, and that line, you can move it just as easy, 1.5 inches, and knock down a hell of a lot more fire. And I'll tell you this, 2.5 inches flowing 125 gallons a minute through fog nozzles does not equal a 2.5 with an 1.8 inch smooth bore. Okay? Boy, you want to roll a hand grenade in the room of firefighters, mention slicers, right? I see smiles, I hear some laughter, right? You want to blow up a room, you mention slicers. Okay? It seems like we've gotten polarized, folks. We've got the people that say, we're going to go through the front door every time, no matter what. And we have people that say, we're going to knock it down from the outside every time, no matter what. And you know what? Both of them are wrong. Okay? We have options. We have tools. We're going to strive to get the first line in the right place to put water right on the seat of the fire. Now, depending on the fire conditions, the building layout, the staffing, okay, that may mean an aggressive interior attack, or that may mean putting water through a window, okay? What does it mean to us? It means every time we pull up on a job, we're going to do a good 360. We're going to do a good size up. We're going to think about what goals I want to accomplish, where's the fire, where are the potential victims, what can I do, and we're going to do it. It may mean going inside, it may mean a window, okay? But we got to remember there's very few absolutes in this job, right? So we're going to think, and we're going to make sure that whatever we do, we strive to get that line in the right place, put water on the seat of the fire. If I can get it through the front door, great. If I can get it through the window, great. Keep in mind, though, that despite what some of the slicers folks might tell us, sometimes going around to the Charlie side and putting water through the window where the fire venting, okay, is a lot slower than opening the front door and hitting it through the front door. Okay? Split levels are great for that, right? I can get up, open that door, get on the landing, look up the stairs. There's the kitchen, dining room, family rooms, usually where my fire is. Hit it, knock it out. Versus bushwhacking around the Charlie side, climbing over fences and dogs, down a side hill, around a pool, getting my foot caught in some kid's Fisher-Price play castle, trying to get my pre-connector on the back when I could have gone to the front door, punched it open and gone, oh, look, there's the fire. Think. I hope today the big thing you take away from this, what I'm telling you is to think, to get out there, to talk, to look at your first do, to look at the setup you have, to look at the hose and nozzles you use, and say, is it right for our first do? Is it right for our crew? Is it right for our department? And we're going to train. That's my presentation today. I want to thank Mike Snodgrass for putting this on, aggressivefirefighter.com. We're all getting it right, and for all of you coming here today to get it right. Thank you.